following is a presentation of KSL Sports. Hello, Cougar Nation.
Top of the key, triple, Richie Saunders, fourth three-pointer of the night, massive make.
Every Monday night, we break down the Cougars' last game and look ahead to next week. Cougar Nation, brought to you by Central Bank. Here's BYU insider Mitch Harper and Matt Baiamonte on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
It's the season finale of Cougar Nation, and we're glad to be on board with you, BYU fans, here on just a great season of BYU athletics on Cougar Nation. We started back in the football season, which went on to have an 11-win campaign, 11-2, that carried over into basketball, in which they made a run to the Sweet 16. We are truly living in some of the best times, Mitch, that BYU athletics has ever seen.
That is so true, Matt. And it's an exciting time for BYU sports because they're in the Big 12 and everything seems to be in front of them. And nothing is holding them back from being a national contender in whatever sport it is.
Right.
And football and men's basketball kind of take the cake for highlighting the potential of BYU athletics. And it's great because the season was so successful for both teams, yet they go into the off seasons feeling like
there's more to be had.
There's more to be had, and we got done today with football spring practice. BYU men's basketball, of course, closed out its season last week in Newark. Saw Kevin Young and his coaching staff to recognize new women's basketball head coach Lee Kumar today. So it's been a busy day, but it feels like a little bit of this was kind of the unofficial end to the athletics season. There'll be baseball, of course, but for the big headliner sports, today kind of felt like a little bit of a close as they settle into the heart of the offseason.
It is the finale, the season finale, season 2 of Cougar Nation. This is your last chance to get on the phone line with us, 801-575-8255. What is your biggest takeaway from Kevin Young's first year as the men's basketball coach? We want to hear you. Cougar Nation, this show is for you, 801-575-8255. 8255. We'll open the phone lines and we'll give you our takeaways from a great season.
Cougar Nation takeaways. Mitch and Matt analyze BYU's last week of play and what it means for the next week.
BYU basketball season comes to a close, 113-88 in Newark, New Jersey, as they fell to the Alabama Crimson Tide. You know all about that, so we're not going to go too
We don't need
deep.
to rehash that.
We don't need to rehash those wounds that I like to think are getting healed as they get the transfer portal activities.
They're healing a lot faster after Duke blew their doors off.
Yes, and then you got Dominique Diomande coming in as a new
Bienvenue, Dominique.
Yes, I mean, you speak French. I fully expect you on season 3 of Cougar Nation to be holding down an interview with Dominique Diomande in French next season. But I think my big takeaway from Kevin Young's first year with BYU basketball as the head coach is he exceeded expectations in a year where the expectations were really high, and I think he exceeded all of them. I thought he did a fantastic job this year, and I just think that's my biggest takeaway when looking at year one under Kevin Young.
It's a good takeaway. One of my biggest takeaways is the proof is in the pudding in terms of what he is selling. Remember, it was about a year ago that he was inside the Marriott Center, and he said that he wanted BYU to be one of the premier destinations in college basketball to prepare you for the NBA. And you hear that, and of course you love to hear it, but you also wonder, how was that possible? We haven't put a guy into the NBA since Jimmer Fredette. It's been over a decade. Is this place really going to become a haven for development? Fast forward a year, his sales pitch is proven. He can sell a realistic vision to recruits now that if you come here, you're going to get better. You're going to play in high-profile games. We're going to go to the tournament. There's going to be a spotlight on you, and you'll have every opportunity to play professional basketball. That's no longer just a fancy dream that once was. That the proof is there. We haven't heard yet on some decisions for next year's roster, i.e. Yegor Demon, does he go pro? And Richie, does he go pro? And whether they return or not, it's a win-win either way. If they come back, next year's roster is going to be super talented, and there's going to be an opportunity to make a deep run in the tournament. If they go pro, that helps the program because Kevin Young and that vision of helping players prepare for professional basketball, he can sell that on the recruiting trail. His pitch is already working. A.J. DeBonsa's already committed. He's going to be in Provo and next month. So the pitch is there, but now there's tangible evidence behind what he's selling. And I think for that to have happened within 1 year, it's quite remarkable.
It truly is. And BYU finishes the year 26-10. And I thought it was just an incredible season for this BYU basketball program, which, of course, ended in the Sweet 16, and it ends a 14-year drought of not going to the second weekend. And I think my second takeaway, Matt, everything you laid out plus what we saw this first season, I'm very confident we're not going to be waiting another 14 years for BYU to go to the Sweet 16. Like you can never assume that you're just going to get back to these levels in an NCAA tournament because it's so hard to win games in that tournament. Look at someone like Baylor who wins an NCAA tournament title in 2021. They haven't got out of the first weekend since. So it is challenging. However, I think the way that they're building out these teams, the way that they're recruiting with the high school recruiting paired up with veteran transfer portal players and roster retention, to me, you're tapping in all the perfect buckets to make a really consistent program that can get to that regional semifinal every single year, or at least have a chance, be in the conversation if the matchups break your way. I just feel confident we're not going to wait another 14 years to see it happen again. I think BYU within the next 2 to 3 years can do it again. I think next year's going to be a great chance. BYU could be a top 15 team in the preseason polls next year, depending on how the roster breaks out. So I just think that there's a lot of momentum for BYU basketball heading into year 2.
Kevin Young is a young coach in terms of years. However, he's rich in experience. And one of my takeaways from this season was his ability to develop players is going to be a real weapon for this program because you can't assume every year, Mitch, you're reeling in A.J. DeBonsa.
Yeah.
They've never done it before. What we're going to be experiencing next year is going to be a first for BYU basketball. And you can't fall into the trap of, well, we've got Kevin Young and we're winning and our NIL funds are high and we're, to quote a booster in an ESPN article, quote, we will not be outbid. You just can't assume every year it's going to be A.J. DeBonsa. A.J. has already proven without having played a game for BYU, he's a different cat in a good way. He's all ball. He wants to be prepped for the league. Not every kid is going to want that. So you just can't bank on year after year you're going to get high-end talent. But what you can bank on is a Richie Saunders type developing into a fringe NBA player. You can bank on finding Mawut Mag in the transfer portal and him becoming a true 3-and-D. Because at Rutgers, he was all D but not a lot of 3. And then he really expanded his game to be a true 3-and-D player. You can rely on in-season Yegor Demon shooting so poorly at the start of Big 12 play. He found his way at the end of the season and shot the ball very well in the NCAA tournament and even the Big 12 tournament. So that development, which I think traces back to his time in the D League, that was the developmental league before the G League. It traces back to his time running pre-draft workouts with the Philadelphia 76ers and the Phoenix Suns. This dude can teach the game, and I think that is a valuable weapon for BYU.
BYU, some numbers on BYU this season. They're 23rd nationally in scoring offense, 81.4. I expect more of that of the same. Top 25 offense, I think that's going to be a calling card for BYU. Scoring defense, 72.6 points per game allowed, 197th nationally. You got to get better there.
Yep.
And I'm curious to see how Kevin Young evolves with building out teams that are tougher on the defensive end. I thought they were tough this year, and I think they were underrated at times in games this season. But clearly, as you saw in the Sweet 16 and games, some even the second round where you play Wisconsin, they couldn't slow down Wisconsin at all. They could not shut them down in the second half. Fortunately for BYU, they were so good offensively that they were okay, and they won that game. But you've got to get better on the defensive end. I think that's one area that I'm really curious to see how Kevin Young evolves, because we've always known, since he's got here to BYU, his offensive background is just impressive. I mean, look at what he did with Devin Booker. His MVP years, or at least MVP caliber years, were under the watch of Kevin Young. Since then, I don't feel like Devin Booker's been close to an MVP level. So we know the offensive pedigree. Can he get it done on the defensive end and build out teams that can win on that side? Because we're seeing with Houston, who's going to a Final Four, defense can still win championships.
I think he can. There's two things on the defensive side that I think hurt the numbers. Number one, they changed their scheme halfway through the year. I think they had an idea of what they wanted to do, which stemmed from NBA defenses. But one, you don't have NBA talent,
Sure,
which is harder to execute on the defensive end. And then secondly, it's the Big 12, baby. It's not ref the same. And I think there was an adjustment period there defensively. And then secondly, and I think this is a pro rather than a con, but he was very heavy into the youth at the start of the season. You were playing a lot of Yegor Demon. You were playing a lot of cannon catchings, oftentimes together. That's a lot of youth. That's a lot of freshmen playing ball. And then what happened early in Big 12 play to where things flipped? You played a lot more experienced guys. You insert Mawot Mag in the starting lineup. You get Dallin Hall more minutes. Dawson Baker started to see more minutes. Those are all old guys in college basketball. So I think he learned a valuable lesson there, which is, hey, you can play an AJ. You can play a Yegor. You just can't have 3 of your 5 guys at one time being freshmen. And I think you'll see, mark my words, Mitch, you will see in the transfer portal, it's going to be juniors, it's going to be seniors filling those last roster spots because you need age and experience if you want to win.
great point, because I do not expect he's going to turn to more high school freshmen. It's a big enough workload placed on Debanza.
Right.
You know, and he's going to still have moments where he's a freshman, but he's a different tier of freshman even than a Yegor, and that's what makes him so intriguing. We got to take our first time out. Cougar Nation sponsored by Central Bank, serving Utah County for over 133 years with trusted service, modern technology, and personalized care. Central Bank, proud sponsors of Cougar Nation this season. We appreciate them. We're taking the time out. We'll get to more BYU basketball talk, what's the latest with the portal, what's the latest with the roster for next year. We'll hit on that next here on Cougar Nation.